Hey friends, let's go ahead and get into essay number 137. We've just recently finished essay number 136, which was a fascinating read about Massachusetts State House. And we're here on page 332 of American Miscellany. Now, this book was published in 1865. Completely random essays, completely random subjects and authors. So I don't know what's coming. I'm just going to go ahead and put that caveat out there. I'm reading this book for the first time along with you guys. So we are learning together for the first time. And sometimes in 1865, we learn about things that, I don't know, may be morally questionable in this day and age. But okay, we're reading together. We're learning. Page 332 of American Miscellany. Here we are on essay number 137, The Sons of the Ocean. As men in every station and condition of life generally fall into particular divisions, a seafaring life admits of an arrangement of captains of vessels in three classes, distinct in their character from each other. There are among sea captains, as well as in all other kind of business, men who, from vocation and inclination, and others who by chance or a whim of fate follow the sea, and others again who enter this path because no other remains open to them. From the designation of these three classes, particular generic names are necessary, which we shall here make use of for that purpose. There are among ship captains, seamen, captains, and skippers. The seaman feels himself born for the ocean, and however the circumstances of his childhood may shape themselves, he wears out his boy's shoes upon ship's deck, and already, while a boy, obtains in a manner an elevated view of life and of the world from the mainmast top, where his commander sends him in storm and tempest. Accustomed to the adverse elements, deprived of tranquility and comfort, his moral powers are developed by difficulties and dangers. Courage in him is a moral self-reliance, and manifests itself as strength of mind, in perseverance and endurance, in self-denial and privation. This courage of the seaman has nothing in common with the so-called courage of the mercenary, which for a few pence he manifests as the blind, will-less instrument of absolute despotism. The seaman passes through all grades of service, from cabin boy to commander, and deports himself in every station and situation as a born seaman. The ocean is his element, the storm is his companion, the universe his world, and the central point of his life his ship. The seaman, in his place as captain, regards the ocean as his home, his cabin as his dwelling, his quarterdeck as his promenade, his vessel as a part of his own being. The seaman on shore longs to be on board again, as the youth longs for his beloved. All his thoughts and cares hover round his vessel. In conversation on different subjects, he is all the while thinking of his ship, and loves to talk of nothing so much as the dangers he has gone through. He regards his vessel with pride. When he is leaving or returning to it, it is the joy of his stormy life. The retired loneliness and the deep reflection which are at all times peculiar to his situation develop in the seaman that depth of contemplation which regards life from an elevated position, in accordance with the unconscious result of his nautical studies, which lead him into the boundless domain of astronomy. He considers our planet as an imperfect, insignificant thing in mathematical relation to other planets, the universe as a region of eternal motion where solar systems revolve around other solar systems. In such contemplations of creation, forced upon him, so to speak, by his calling, he feels the nothingness of earthly life, while he recognizes the dignity of the human mind. As a spirit in a body of clay, he is able to fix the point of his momentary existence upon the ocean with more or less precision. Conversant with the orbits of the stars, he arrives at the elevated degree of calculating by seconds the distances of constellations, whose motions are as familiar to him as the course of his own ship. Through mathematical demonstration, faith becomes in him the conviction that a higher power exists, which directs the universe and reveals itself upon our planet through its works as nature, and governs the tides, the breathing of the ocean, under the influence of the moon, the pulse throb of a mysterious life. Opposed to the grandeur of the universe, worldly brilliancy appears to him in its insignificant nothingness, while his spirit feels itself allied with the all-governing primitive power which reveals itself in the daring elevation of human intellect, calculating the rotation of the constellations. He is emboldened to follow the path of a comet, to enter the realms of infinitude, and shrinks back with holy awe before the impenetrable mystery of the magnet. The seaman treats his crew as men, and his officers as friends, not forgetting that he has been a sailor himself and borne the toils and hardships before the mast. He endeavors to lighten the lot of his crew. He observes a rigid fulfillment of his duties as captain, while he requires from each man equal exactitude in service and equal respect as a man on all occasions and at all times. Beholding in his officers men who may become tomorrow what he is today, he treats them as he desired to be treated by his commander when in a similar position. More accustomed to thinking than to talking, the seaman is laconic in his discourse and likes, least of all, the obtrusive speeches and far-fetched questions of tedious passengers, which are as strange to him as are life and the world to them. If accident brings him in contact with a man in whom he finds a harmony with his own feelings, whether it be with a passenger on board or in social intercourse on shore, the polar crust of ice which encloses his heart easily melts, and his inward nature opens, under the reciprocal attraction, to unrestrained communion. Bountiful and generous without extravagance in his intercourse on shore, he displays his peculiar qualities in hospitality on board his ship. He relinquishes the details of providing for the crew to those whose office involves this duty, while he gives his particular attention to the supplying of pure water and sufficient stores. The instruments and charts required by his vocation are especially dear to him, and his possessions of this sort approach to a luxury which he displays in nothing else. In his toilet he is neat and cleanly, as well as in his ship. He is less observant of the changes of fashion when on shore than of the changes of the moon when on board, but takes care to have a wardrobe suitable to the variations of climate. He is fond of reading on board, and keeps on increasing a little cabinet library, though few authors serve him. He likes only those that sail deep and carry rich cargoes. At sea he longs to see his voyage speedily ended. On shore he wishes himself again at sea. His manly character is not only evinced in imminent danger, but more especially by his equanimity and patience in calms and other hindrances. Familiar with the dangers of the element from his youth up, he becomes equally familiar with the thoughts of death, with which he is threatened by every cloud that disturbs the horizon, and which may bring about his last hour. Although attached to life by the bonds of love and friendship, he does not fear death in the moment of danger, feeling the responsibility which rests upon him by having the lives of other men confided to his charge, who are placed under his unrestricted authority, and who, in a measure, are all involved in his fate, within a limited space, are independent upon him. He maintains his firmness and presence of mind in decisive and critical moments. Without expecting miracles of a supernatural character where human help fails, he sustains himself as a man upon the elevation of strength of mind, the greatest miracle on earth, since man, revealed in the seaman, dares to brave and contend against the destructive power of the elements, a worm of the dust floating upon the raging ocean, allied as spirit to the primitive power, whose breath pervades all nature and roars in the storm and in the hurricane. In churchyards, excuse me, in churchyards and burial places, we seldom see the memorial of a seaman. Born on the seashore as a boy growing up on board, as a youth only on shore to go to sea again, the seaman for the most part ends his life in the waves, whereby the owners lose nothing, because ship and cargo are insured. The ocean on which his life was developed most generally becomes his grave, and the storm which raged about his path and proved his courage and hardihood becomes the only witness of his death hour. But storm and tempest, raging above him in his last moments, offer no organ of renown. The murmur of the waves tells not to his people the last struggles of the seaman. No whispering of the billows in a calm on the shore of his home brings his last farewell to the objects of his affection, nor the last sigh which, in the dismal distance of the raging elements, or within sight of the coast of his destination, is lost amid the howling of the storm and the roaring of the breakers, in whose companionship death embraces him. The fury of the tempest which caused his end, closing his bursting eyes in eternal night, and his heart in everlasting silence, is appeased and has died away. The sunbeams which tanned the seaman's cheek shines upon no flower, sparkles in no dewdrop upon the grassy sod of the seaman's grave. His fame disappears as tracklessly as the wake which he leaves behind him in circumnavigating the globe, while his name lives in the recollection of kindred hearts which knew and acknowledged him in his worth as a man. This is the seaman, developed in struggles, braving every danger in the consciousness of his mental power and manly dignity. Opposed to the seaman, we see the skipper. The skipper has entered upon a seafaring life because he was good for nothing on shore. He ran away from his apprenticeship to a tailor and was not strong enough for a blacksmith or carpenter. He sails 10 years before the mast and at length becomes mate, because there is none else who can write and the account in a table of reckoning. Because there is none else who can write the account in a table of reckoning and call stop when casting the log. He arrives in 12 years as a second mate, so far that he can keep a logbook, and comes tolerably near the latitude by means of the sextant, when the horizon is not too uncertain or the ship too crank. At length he finds a captain who makes him first mate and keeps him in his employ for years because he is as stupid as himself, and tolerates him because he, as mate, takes no notice of the captain's blunders. He becomes captain by his good name as a manager, by his marriage with a widow, by the caprice of an old woman, by the death of a captain, or by the influence of a sister or niece in the service of a merchant, and gets a ship to repair the rigging, patch the sails, and take a crew over the sea on the starving system. Having completely fulfilled the expectations of the stingiest of owners in this respect, a better vessel with a more numerous crew is confided to his hunger cure. He is now captain and remains so, and lays up money that he may retire as soon as possible. He traffics and cheats on board and on shore, and sells his own clothes to a sailor in payment of his monthly wages. Instead of the nautical almanac, he carries an old, low Dutch reckoning book. He knows nothing of the distances of constellations, and has no acquaintance with any star in the heavens but the evening star, which once caught his attention because it sparkled alone. He carries no chronometer, for he does not know how to use it. On a long course, he relies upon the accidental meeting of a ship which knows the longitude, and then boasts to his mate of his precision, if he has not made a mistake of more than 7 degrees. He treats his crew like slaves, and his officers like servants, drinks a glass of wine or grog himself, but enjoins temperance upon all besides, for he maintains that spirits and much meat are real poison at sea. The provisions are given out to the crew in his presence, and he strictly controls the weight. If the ration is short by half a pound, he thinks it is very well. The next time more can be given. His favorite seat is the water butt, upon the after deck, where he observes the clouds. The least unfavorable change in the wind sets his blood in a ferment, and in a contrary wind, or even in a calm, he loses his senses. He raves about like a madman, looks up the cabin boy to find some fault with him, and seizes the nearest rope to cool his wrath upon him. If the wind becomes favorable, he chats with the man at the helm and with the cook, and promises the mate his influence to procure him a ship. In the neighborhood of the coast, he is thrown into a fever of anxiety because he does not know where it is. He climbs the mast 10 times a day and insists that a sailor must see land where there is none. If he should at length find a pilot boat, he gets intoxicated with joy, gives over his ship to the pilot, and lays himself down in his berth. On land, he is a sea hero, and relates miracles of his ability as a seaman. He is fond of associating with the captains with whom he once sailed before the mast, and allows himself to be treated by them as the ship chandlers and at hotels. As the time approaches for him to put to sea again, he becomes cross and discontented, for he fears the sea, as a miserable sinner does the devil. He keeps no mate with him for more than one voyage, and no sailor will hire with him who has ever met with anyone who has sailed with him before. He cheats his owners and knows how to save, in provisions and in the inventory, for them and for himself, and retains their good opinion of him as an able captain. When he has raked money enough together, he retires to repose, and becomes a grocer or tavern keeper in the neighborhood of a harbor frequented by sailors. He shudders at the thought of the sea, but allows himself nevertheless to be called captain, and keeps a picture of the ship which he last had charge of in a frame and glass. Such is the skipper, as contrasted with the seaman. The third, or properly the middle class, is represented by the captain. He is neither seaman nor skipper, and there is nothing further to be said of him than that he is captain of this or that ship. It is self-evident that the true seaman is to be found in all ranks, among the sailors of the merchant vessels as well as among the midshipmen of the navy, although many a skipper and captain, favored by fortune, commands a frigate, which the seaman who stands at the helm as a sailor would be more capable of guiding. In respect to the 3 above appellations, we remark in conclusion that the word seaman is often used where skipper or captain is meant, and in English may perhaps be replaced by the word sailor. But our notion of a good seaman is evidently something different from that of a good sailor, for every skipper and captain can be a good sailor if he has a good wind.